Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brice Lewis. Basketball news, right here on the podcast. That's what we do. I tell you everything basketball related. We discuss basketball topics, basketball discussions, everything basketball, as you can tell. Even during COVID, we are still strong with all types of basketball discussions. Just really a time where you just discuss anything that is basketball, and etc. Obviously, as you can tell, I've used the word basketball almost 10 times in the first 30 seconds of the show. But really, yeah, so we got some news for you today on the show. We're going to talk about update, obviously, on the news, on the league moving forward. A decision is coming soon on the season resuming or not resuming. Also, we're going to talk about a couple of players, why maybe some aren't appreciated, why and what some could be coming back from injury. We're also going to talk about other news and notes from teams for some draft picks and everything like that. We're going to talk about everything all here on the podcast, man. Everyone keep it real for y'all all the time. So hope you enjoy the show today. We also have a basketball topic on a video game for 2K. So obviously, if you're not a gamer or play 2K, you might want to skim past that segment, which I completely understand. But if you are, a segment just for you guys. So obviously, I'm going to start off with the major news. So Adam Silver has came out and said that he expects a decision to be made on the NBA season within 2 to 4 weeks. So within 2 to 4 weeks, we will know, is the season coming back or not? The reported biggest issue for the league right now is testing. Just making sure they get enough tests for all the players. That is it. That is, I mean, that's not it, but like that's the biggest issue. If they can resolve that during these next 2 to 4 weeks, it's a very strong saying that the league and the season will come back. Adam Silver is feeling more confident in it. The board of directors are feeling more, or governors are feeling more positive about it. It seems like there may be some excitement here. That we are moving closer to having a season. And obviously that will be big news for every basketball fan around the whole basketball world to know that the game they love and they've cherished for so long is coming back and now is going to be back on television. Obviously, you know, they're going to be back and playing their game, doing what they do at the best of their rates, and just, you know, we get to finish this season. Obviously, this has been a big discussion in the basketball community. Should they resume the season? Should they not resume the season? You've heard stars, you've heard legends, you've heard Hall of Famers come out say yes or no, or yes and no, and yes and no. But all that matters is who's currently in the league currently, who are the big decision makers from the players and the owners and the board of directors and everything. And they're the ones at the end of the day who will come in with the decision to decide, hey, do we want to continue this season or not? Obviously, like I said, all the signs right now are pointing at the season coming back, the season returning, the season being resumed. The only question is, how are they going to resume it? Are you finishing the regular season, or are you going straight to playoffs? Obviously, people feel like at the timetable of where they're going to make the season announcement, it seems as if the regular season is becoming slightly more unlikely. That's why when he had the conference call with all the players about a week ago, Adam Silver, he said, listen, I'm going to let y'all know right now, any team that's on the playoff bubble, there is a strong chance that you won't get an opportunity to make it. That we're going to have to go right to playoffs and et cetera. So obviously, if that's the case, then that's going to mean a lot. So, to me, it's going to be a very interesting to see the layout of when they make the decision. How are they going to make it? What are the parameters and the precautions? Where are the locations of the games? And, testing, and if we're going to have a regular season or not. Obviously, we've heard all these reports of different things, places saying you can do it here. We've heard momentum, they're going to allow it at Disney World. They're going to allow it at maybe Vegas. There are rumors everywhere swirling about where they'll do this out, where they could do it at, who's interested, who wants to do it. All of it. So it's a very interesting time, I would say, because everybody's trying to figure out what's the next move, what's the next step, what's the next ideal, what's the next thing. So, to me, I'm hoping for the best. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope that they can bring back the season, as I discussed in my last show. And so we're going to have to see what happens. We're really going to have to see what happens here, because it's going to be a very interesting debate. Even if the season comes back, there's still going to be people who out there it's like, we shouldn't be doing this. There's no point. There's an asterisk by the champion. Do they have a champion? Listen, asterisk or not, they got the chip. People like to talk about asterisks. Oh, there's an asterisk by it. People talk about Toronto's championship win. Well, they lost Clay and KD. At the end of the day, they won the chip. At the end of the day, the kids gonna know whoever was on that team, their father, was a champion. So, at the end of the day, they can't take that away from you. They can't take away the ring. It really, if anything, it's just always going to be a debate. If the season had never been stopped, would the result of the end of the season been the same? If LeBron and the Lakers still win the championship, well, people were predicting the Lakers to win the championship anyway. So is it really an asterisk by it? It's only an asterisk of maybe a team like Houston or a team like Boston potentially or anything like that wins the championship. Now it's like, I don't know, it's because of that break, they're in shape and, they had to go at it and they weren't in the right positioning, and you can use all them excuses of a team that you wouldn't think if they were just playing through a regular season would have won. Now you're going to say, oh, it's because of Corona. It's because they didn't play. Asterisk. And I just think that's unfair. That's very unfair. These players are going out here working hard, busting their butts, trying to put on a great product for you, and you're going to assume that because of one thing, now all of a sudden there's an asterisk by it? To me, that's not right. And listen, a group of people we can definitely say is a big part of this decision are the NBA superstars. Obviously, on Monday, I believe Adam Silver had a call with all of the superstars in the league. It's kind of funny because basically the league knows who their superstars are. LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Paul George, all of them, James Harden, I believe, all of them were in a call with Adam Silver about continuing the season, and all of them, Chris Paul, all of them said, we want the season to return. If ands, or buts, we want it to return. So you got that plus this announcement, and then everybody's kind of feeling some positive feelings and opinions on if the season coming back. It is crazy because the NBA is one of the leagues that really, their players are such a big part of the actual league itself in terms of the decisions that are made. NFL is probably also one of the leagues that, outside of the contracts, they really don't have much say in how the league operates. The NBA superstars can all band together and say, we can make sure the league operates in a certain way because without us, they wouldn't be popular. They can legitimately say, and it's because obviously basketball, there's not as many players. Without LeBron, without KD, without all these guys, you don't have us. You ain't making the money you've been making. You ain't gonna get the sellouts you've been wanting. You're losing money. You're losing revenue. League's gonna become less popular. So you need us. So you need to listen to us. NFL, a superstar here and a superstar here can leave and a team can still flourish without it. It's not as superstar dependent. So they can afford to do that. NBA, they used that power to their advantage, and that's how they were able to sit here and be a big part of it. So, obviously, that's going to be big moving forward, obviously, as there is some excitement moving towards potentially having an NBA season. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Lamelo Ball potentially playing for the New York Knicks. And we're also going to talk about the top 10 of the ESPN list that was released on the top players in NBA history, and we're going to break it down, all that right here and more on the podcast.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about Adam Silver saying the league will come to a decision within 2 to 4 weeks to bring back the NBA season. Everybody's keeping their fingers crossed, hoping that Adam Silver comes back with the news we all want to hear, that basketball is returning to us. And I know that would make everybody very, very happy for the season. Obviously, it's a very spirited debate. Everybody's trying to decide, should it even come back? Is it worth coming back? And obviously people are like, no, it should come back. We should get a champion. We need to crown a champion. We need to know who the champion is going into the next year. All of that. It's a very exciting time. And obviously don't forget to thank your local NBA superstar, because without them, this would not, well, it could still be possible, but it will be a little bit harder of becoming possible because of the meeting that they have with Adam Silver, and all of them commandingly say, bring this season back. So obviously we have that to look forward to and something to look forward to in the future. But now I'm going to talk about the top 10 list that ESPN has brought out. They really did a list on top 74 players, but we're going to talk about the top 10 specifically. And we're going to talk about each player and if they deserve to be in the top 10. So starting at number 10, Shaquille O'Neal. Obviously, if you remember Shaquille O'Neal during his days as a player, Shaquille O'Neal was known as probably one of the most dominant players to ever play this sport because of his size and girth. And we're not talking, Orlando he was big, but LA he was literally unmovable. He was an immovable object. He could drop 25 and get 15 any night, 30 if he wanted to. Shaq truly was a dominant center in this league just because he just was just bigger than everybody else. Wasn't taller, but just bigger. And he was just so dominant at what he did, and I definitely think he deserves to be in the top 10. At number 9, Kobe Bean Bryant. Rest in peace, Kobe. Obviously, Kobe, he's a guy who is considered one of the greatest of all time. Just, if you've seen Kobe play, he's a magician on the court. He's unbelievable on the court. And, he's a guy that has just, he's touched so many people. And he created Mamba mentality. This man is literally modeled his game after Michael Jordan and truly is one of the greats to ever play this game and play it with such a beautiful way of basketball. And Kobe definitely is deserving of a top 10 spot in any top 10 list because of how great he was when he played. And especially coming from such a young age on top of that too. At number 8, Tim Duncan, who some people consider the greatest power forward to ever play. I would believe, and I would go with that. Tim Duncan was Mr. Fundamentals. Never beat you because he was the most athletic. Never beat you because he was the highest jumper. Never beat you because he was the strongest. But he just had flawless fundamentals. And Tim Duncan's one of those guys who shows you, listen, you don't gotta be bigger, stronger, or faster. If you have better fundamentals than the other guy, you can still drop 20, 30 on him if you need to. You just do it in a very technical way. And that's why Tim Duncan was probably one of the hardest people to ever stop in the post, because of the fact that no matter who he went against, he had the fundamentals and the mental to be able to defeat his opponent and result it into actual performance of points, rebounds, whatever you needed him to do. And that's why he was probably one of the greatest power forward to ever live. At number 7, Larry Bird. Obviously, Larry Bird, a guy who, Larry Bird was that guy. Remember, I wasn't born when Larry Bird was playing. But from what I've seen in some of the games I've aired, Larry Bird was that guy. He was a guy who could score, do it all, defend, just guard your best player, get that key assist. Larry Bird was truly one of the greats. And I can understand why Magic and Larry had such a great rivalry, because they're both tremendous players, fantastic players, great players. And so with that being known, it's just one of those things where it's just like, man, they're amazing. They're amazing. And I think that's something you can never take that away from them. And Larry Bird will always probably be, if you want to go with Bill Russell, so be it. But probably some people consider the greatest Boston Celtic to ever play. Number 6, Wilt Chamberlain, obviously. Wilt, dominant. Lakers, dominant. We know what he did. That man scored 100 in a game. This man did unbelievable feats. Video game numbers that you only see in 2K. He did during his time. He was that great of a player. And when you do those type of historical feats, why wouldn't you belong in the top 10? Because of the dominance he had when he played. Just so dominant all the time. You can't hate on it. You can't miss it. You know how great he is. So that tells me everything I need to know. Wilt is definitely deserving of a top 10 spot. Number 5, somebody he ran with a little bit, Magic Johnson. Obviously, Magic Johnson considered, in a lot of people's eyes, the greatest point guard to ever play the game. Obviously, he was one of the first point guards who was bigger than everybody, but still had that amazing passing grace and could score if he needed to. People underrate Magic Johnson's scoring. Magic Johnson could get you 20, 25 a night if he needed to. Magic truly was one of the greats. Obviously, with the Showtime Lakers. Without him, there may be no Showtime Lakers. Or actually, there wouldn't be a Showtime Lakers. And when you have a guy who has an entire way of basketball named after him, you know he's great. You know he's great. And there's no debating that, for sure. At number 4, Bill Russell. Obviously, Bill Russell. People like to say, well, he played in a time where he was bigger than everybody else, and the league wasn't, so say, as talented as it was later in the later years, and so that's why he was so dominant. But you can't forget, this man, Bill Russell, got 10 championships. He still has more than LeBron and Michael Jordan combined. So, just by the ring count, you have to put him in the top 10. Because that'd be crazy if a player got 10 rings and he's not even cracking the top 10, top 20, top 30 of any top players of all time. Unless that man was just happened to be one of the luckiest players in NBA history and ride the bench of every championship team. You know, if you're a big contributor, you probably are one of the greats. At number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, obviously the skyhook. Unstoppable. Probably one of the most unstoppable shots ever. He was an unstoppable player. Again, all these big men on this list have something in common. They were unstoppable. They could beat you any night, no matter who you were. And Kareem was one of those guys who could beat you every night, no matter who you were. Truly one of the greats. And some people think he is the GOAT. Some people think he truly was the GOAT. Not Jordan, not LeBron. Speaking of number 2, ESPN ranks LeBron James as the second best player of all times. Obviously, this is where a lot of people put LeBron James behind Jordan at number 2. Jordan is, I meant Jordan, but LeBron has done so much for the league. He's done so much. Coming out of high school, dominating from game 1. Dominating, bringing trash teams to NBA finals and number 1 seeds. You can't say that man can't be great because not every player can take a bad team and win with them. And LeBron did that. Put some respect on LeBron James's name. And I feel like we may not truly appreciate LeBron until after he leaves basketball. And obviously, number 1 on this list, Michael Jordan. Obviously, won 6 championships during the 90s. One of the greatest players to ever play the game. A lot of people consider him the greatest. An absolute spectacle to watch play. Just an absolutely memorizing player. And obviously now a lot of people are going to be against this decision and actually agree with this decision. And those were your top 10. Now, I know I was supposed to talk about Lamelo Ball, so we're going to move into the next segment. But we'll talk about that. Plus, we'll also talk about why does Steph Curry not get the credit that he deserves. All that right here and more on the podcast.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the top 10 players on ESPN's list they released of the top 74. I discussed the top 10 players. All of them deserve to be in the top 10. I discussed what I thought of each player and their positioning on the list. I mean, listen, even if you don't think that particular order is the top 10, we all have to come to an agreement that is the top 10. Let's just be real here. That is the top 10. I mean, you may be able to make an argument for one or two other guys, but that's a pretty solid top 10 list ESPN has came up with. So obviously that's going to be very, very exciting and very, very interesting to see if any other player can break into the top 10, maybe next time they ever release a list like this, or can any players potentially playing right now jump the list, which the only one playing in the top 10 currently is LeBron James, and he's number 2. So it's going to be a very interesting situation. So now we're going to get into that news on Lamelo Ball. Obviously, there's been some connections to Lamelo Ball to New York. I think LeVar would like his son to play in New York. He's always wanted his sons to play in big cities to help the big baller brand. And, you know, it's a question. Could Lamelo Ball help the New York Knicks? I mean, listen, the Knicks are out looking for a point guard. If they land a top 3, let's say 3 or 2, listen, they already have a big man. Anthony Edwards will probably come off at 1. So it seems like to me, Lamelo Ball might be destined to end up in New York. It would certainly fit. It would feel like the branding and everything would fit. I'm sure LeVar would be excited if his son ended up there. Absolutely enthused if his son ended up in New York. And hey, listen, if LeVar gets his way and LaMelo's able to help turn these Knicks around, you know, hey, it'll be interesting since, you know, obviously Lonzo was playing on the Pelicans. And then why do I keep saying LaMelo will be playing on the Knicks if it was drafted. And then seeing them meet twice a year, that would always be an interesting matchup of the Ball brothers. And we'll ever see if Jello ever gets into the league on a roster, even though he's on the G League team right now. And it'll be just an extremely interesting situation. Like I said, some people think LaMelo is the best player in this draft. A lot of people are high on him. He's clearly, people feel like it's the more talented out of the Ball brothers coming out. So obviously those are some big expectations for him. And obviously people are expecting a lot out of him because they think that he has the potential to really be a star/superstar player. And if that is the case, then it puts everybody in a great position to be successful and to bring that gas and that hype to the Ball family back as they try to move forward with being successful and being winners. But now that brings me into my next topic. A topic of Steph Curry. There's been a lot of debate on Steph Curry. Because of the way he changed the league. And how he's broke into the league and how he became a superstar. Steph, when he first entered the scene and he was bombing threes and Golden State became what they became, everyone loved Steph Curry. He was the kindest, nicest person. You know, his wife became big. Everybody thinks every girl in his family is beautiful. Like, literally, just the Curry family was becoming this brand, and Steph was just this great superstar. But with midst of all of that, some players were not always the fondest of Steph Curry. Now, I'm not going to go into anything too deep or anything racial or anything, but there was some players who really were never 100% fans. Now, obviously, with Curry changing the league, some people were even putting him into potentially the top best player in the NBA perspective, which obviously LeBron still at that time had occupied. And obviously, it's been documented that, LeBron and Steph are cool, but they're not like best friends, obviously. And, obviously people talk about their relationship, and then especially when KD came, and after they lost that finals, after they went 73 wins and unanimous MVP, it felt like Curry was starting to then get more disrespect, less appreciation. People were saying he was a fraud, or he's great, but he's not that great. He's not even in the top 5. He's just a guy who can shoot the 3 ball and that's it. He's one-dimensional. A lot of people were against Steph Curry. Now, obviously one reason is because he's changed the game, like I said, because a lot of old-timers and a lot of old-school people remember basketball back in the day was more of a mid-range, post-up, get into the paint and dunk kind of game, physical defense, and then you occasionally hit the 3. Like maybe once or twice every quarter you attempted a 3. Where now, before Steph Curry became Steph Curry, the NBA averaged 18 threes. After Steph Curry became the star, they're averaging 34 a team. Obviously, I feel like a lot of people who watch basketball back in the old days don't like that new way of basketball, of just people jacking up threes. Because that's not the way they look at it. They look at it as, all they're doing is just jacking up a 3 ball and trying to hit a 3. What's exciting about that? Yeah, they're scoring, but it's just like everybody's doing it. What's special? It was different when Golden State only did it, because it's always more appreciated when one person does it, because it's like, wow, they're setting a trend and everybody's impressed. But then when every team does it, it's like, okay, now this is a little overkill. So clearly there was some not the greatest sentiments because of that with Steph, and like I said, a lot of people didn't particularly care / like the fact that was the case. So, obviously that happened. Steph, still I think everybody is realizing is still a great player. Steph can still go out there and give you 28 a game if he had to. And he's still one of, if not the best point guard in the NBA. I think people forget Curry does a lot of things. He is an excellent passer. Curry is probably one of the best passers. Great at the handle, has an underrated handle, can get to the paint, great float shot. He does a lot of things right. And even though he's not the biggest on defense, he tries. He's smart. He can get a steal. He knows how to sometimes play a guy. Always follows his assignments. Curry puts himself in position to be great because he knows what he has to do to be great. And some people look at that and just can't stand that, because if you don't like the way basketball is played today, you blame Steph Curry. And then some people just sit there and think if he had never did this, the game would have never changed, and the game would have still maybe been more what it was. And I just think that, to me, it's just interesting watching and seeing what happens. because Steph Curry is one of the greatest players of our generation, and we need to appreciate him. Remember, he's in his 30s now. We don't know how much longer he'll be playing at this level, and we don't know how much longer he will be playing basketball. Obviously, we expect him to be probably retired before the end of this decade. If anything, you would think probably 2025, 2024, maybe Steph Curry's out of the league. But until that happens, Curry is just a guy who you need to appreciate because he's done a lot for this league. He's helped the league also reach the popularity and, be as great as he's been for them. So, there you go. Coming up next, obviously this is more for my gamers. We're going to talk about why 2K basketball has fell off, as I've seen a lot of tweets recently about 2K basketball not being that great, especially with all the tournaments and everything happening on TV. All that right here and more on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we discussed Lamelo Ball in New York. Could Lamelo Ball bring back that star power and help turn the Knicks around? Obviously the LeVar Ball thing, so Lamelo Ball is considered, some people think, the best player in this draft from a talent perspective, and obviously the number one rated point guard in this draft. So any team that needs a point guard in that top three, Lamelo Ball will definitely be looked at very, very hard. And obviously the Knicks, having one of the worst records in the league, they could potentially end up getting him in the draft. We also talked about why Steph Curry is not appreciated as some people think or should expect. And why that, what's made him be less appreciated and the things that he's dealt with. And, obviously, people blame the change of the game. If you don't like how the game is played, on him, and that obviously sometimes takes away from him, and some players are not always the fondest of him. But Steph Curry, we got to appreciate him while he's still here. I always say we start appreciating these guys when they get later in their career, because you forget how great he was while he played the game of basketball. Now, this segment, I'm going to get into something more towards the gamers of basketball, of course. Obviously, 2K basketball. So if you're a gamer and you play 2K or played 2K, this may be something you're interested in. If you're not, you are completely welcome to fast forward to the next segment, because listen, obviously this may not mean anything to you unless you're just interested to see what I got to say. So obviously the state of 2K basketball is a very bad one. Let's just be straight. 2K basketball is not in the greatest place right now. It's still the most popular basketball game, of course, because there's only really one relevant one, because nobody really wants to / thinks NBA Live is that good. And so the Monopoly game is in 2K. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is obviously a lot of 2K players have said that, honestly, really ever since maybe 2K11, everybody varies on what 2K was the last great 2K game. But I hear a lot of 2K11s, 2K12s. Those were the last great games. And now 2K has become lazy. 2K has basically, since they dominate in the gaming world of basketball, they don't put as much effort as they should into these games. They just add an animation here, a feature here, a game mode here, and say, well, there you go. Buy us again. And a lot of fans have spoken out on it and said, listen, I don't like this. Obviously, one thing that has changed is Ultimate Team. If you are a 2K user, you know what that is. Even though everybody uses My Park, because NBA 2K's Ultimate Team isn't that great. But a lot of their game modes really aren't that great, and I think that's the biggest thing. Especially with games back in the late 2010s, early 2010s, or the late 2000s, early 2010s. A lot of games at that time in general in the sporting world had good game modes, good gameplay, even on the PlayStation 3 at that time. And it was still quality stuff. Like, it was still like, okay, this isn't bad. Like, you enjoyed the game. And that's why you had the love for the game and the fan base became so big. And 2K was that same way. And then just over the years, as being a dedicated player, sometimes, a game comes out, okay, it wasn't great, but next year they're going to come out, oh, it's going to be better, right? It has to be better. It's not going to miss 2 years in a row. Then, it misses 2 years in a row. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, okay, listen. Maybe they got some stuff they're doing. They're trying to change some stuff. They're just throwing some things against the wall. All right, third year can't be bad, right? Can't be bad again. Third year is not that good. Like I said, outside of a game mode here, and an animation here, and some licensing here, and certain players here, it's like, okay, this is cool, I guess. Then fourth year comes. Now you're just like, okay, 4 years now. I've been a fan. I done spent $60 on this game. This game sucks. But the thing also is that, like I said, NBA Live's not as relevant. So if you want to continue to play basketball, because 2K is a very addicting game in terms of it can really take up a lot of free time. Obviously, one of the most popular game modes in 2K is My Park, obviously, because creative player has become so popular in game modes. And 2K has been an example of that, creating your own player, going through a story, going through trying to get, the experience, VC in 2K to improve your player, get his overall, improve his shot. Obviously, the grind makes the game playable for an entire year, updating of rosters, everything like that. It makes the game playable for a whole year. So it's not like you can't play it, but it's like you're playing a game that you know ain't good. It's just because of all those things I just mentioned. That's why you come back and play it. And basically, like I said, since 2K doesn't have strong competition, you can say they don't put a lot of effort into the game in terms of really improving every mode, improving the gameplay, improving the animations. Here's one difference between NBA Live and 2K. NBA Live uses their player system of weight. Okay, if you're 280 going against a 240 guy, that should be a mismatch. Especially his strength should be higher than his strength, the 240 guy. 2K, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you anything. And players get frustrated at that. One thing that 2K has always lived on, every game tries to live on this, is being as realistic as possible to the real game. And there's a lot of things you watch on 2K and think, this doesn't seem real. Some of the things that happen. People say, well, LeBron wouldn't miss that. Curry wouldn't miss that. People wouldn't miss that. People wouldn't do that. They mess up the game here and there. It's really one of those things where it's a very, as one of my good friends say, it's a very grimy game. It's just like, you put up with all of it because it's 2K, but it's not good. Really, it's just the name value. Like, oh, it's 2K basketball. It's 2K. Why wouldn't I play it? Doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. And I just think a lot of 2K players are getting fed up with it. They want the game to improve. It was really highlighted in the 2K tournament that Kevin Durant hosted. It just, there's a lot of flaws. And the gameplay just is not that great. And so I could understand watching 2K gameplay and just like, this isn't impressive at all. and hopefully 2K changes things, but you know how some companies are. If you don't give them real competition, they're not going to feel like they need to change anything. They could do stuff to cut costs if they want to, or just to not go over the top, because you're thinking, well, we're the number one brand or the number one game. Why do we need to rehaul stuff? Why are we rehauling it? Yeah, the fans say it could be better, okay. But you're still buying it, so do we really need to do it this year? Well, they're probably in the business meetings. We should add this because the fans have been asking for it. Yeah, we can, sure. And then actually gets to the actual making of the game. All right, so we're putting that new feature in there. No, hold off on that. I don't know if I want to put that in this game yet. We can just hold on to that idea. And then you're getting the same thing that you got last year. Like I said, except the occasional game mode, the occasional animation, the occasional something different, nothing too different. And you're going out and repaying $60 for the game. Like I said, clearly, people are not happy about it. People don't like it. People don't enjoy it. People obviously definitely hope 2K improves and gets better, because you never know when people are going to stop buying the game because of how bad it's gotten. And so I guess there was my 2K rant. Hopefully, if you're a gamer, you agree. You understand where I'm coming from, and you understand the pain. So don't forget to tweet your local 2K or email them or something and tell them do better. But coming up next, we're going to talk about KD. What will he be next year coming back? And almost, I guess, in a way, an outlook on the Brooklyn Nets season next year, right here on the podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, I went on a little bit of a rant about the 2K gaming series. Obviously, all my 2K gamers that are listening to this podcast understand the struggle and the disappointment with the franchise, how they could be so much better than what they are. And it just feels like they're getting lazy, and just because they're the number one video game in basketball terms, they don't feel the need to have to go out of their way to put forth the best game they can potentially put out year after year. It's one thing if the gameplay was good and you made very small changes, because then it's just like, okay, it's good, I can't complain. It's one thing if it got worse and then it feels like you're not making any dramatic changes. And that's where I think some people have the issue, and some people have the situation. But so now we're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant. Remember, does anybody still call KD the Durantula? Does anybody else still call him that? Kevin Durant. This is kind of like a future outlook on a future season that he could potentially have with next year. So we're discounting the current season. We're talking about next NBA season. What will Kevin Durant look like? And how will that translate to success for the Brooklyn Nets? It's a very interesting question. Very interesting question. The Brooklyn Nets are a team that signed Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant because they believe with those two players they will be competing for championships. in a conference in the East that has never traditionally been known as a tough conference, where you may only have one or two teams at best who can really like give you a run for your money. And so with that being known, what will the Nets look like with Kevin Durant coming back? Will Kevin Durant be the same player that he was in Golden State? I think initially, first few games, we're so used to Kevin Durant playing a certain way, we have to temper our expectations. Remember, Kevin Durant could be averaging 28 a game, and then he'll come back and average 22. And we'll think, what's wrong with KD? The man's still averaging 22. What do you mean? I mean, it's not like this man is averaging 14 a game. Then you could be like, oh, all right, something wrong with KD. 14 a game through 10 games, 15 games. Then yeah, you could maybe make that argument. You can maybe make that case. And you know, it's just one of those things where I think the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the most intriguing team in the Eastern Conference, because you don't know where the Raptors are going to be with Ibaka and Van Fleet being free agents. If Giannis signs back, or if Giannis is obviously going to be here for the next year, obviously, as long as there's no major, as long as there's no major injuries, they should be competing for a championship in the Eastern Conference. Boston is another team that you may see for the next few years competing for a championship. So outside that, maybe the Heat. But you see what I'm saying? It's like we're getting to maybes. It's not like the West. Houston can compete. Lakers can compete. Clippers can compete. Jazz can compete. It's not like that. It's like maybe after this team. So, and then they think about Bucks only have one superstar. People think that he have no superstars. Boston only has one superstar. Brooklyn will have two. And Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So now they have two guys who can take over the game. And I feel like being the second superstar is best for Kyrie. Because if KD has a big game, Kyrie can come in there and say, I can still have a big game. We could do what me and LeBron did in the NBA Finals against the Golden State and drop 40 a game. They definitely have all the potential in the world to do that. So, clearly, if that's the case, there's a lot of potential here. And there's a lot of opportunity here for them to be great. And, you know, Brooklyn, they've been talking about could they trade Chris LeVert or Spencer Dinwiddie. I truly think you can't make a move like that till you see them all on the court together and see how it works out. Kyrie and already told you they're one of the players that are a reason why we can even compete. But at the same time, I can understand from an organizational perspective, they're probably still also one of the few players that you can get something back in trade value. So I can understand thinking about making a trade with those guys. But I think you can't make that type of deal till you see them all on the floor together. Because an ending lineup for them could be Kyrie, Spencer, LeVert at 3, KD at the 4, DeAndre or Jared Allen, whoever you want at the 5. That's I would say that's one of the best starting fives in the NBA. DeAndre got his role, block shots and rebound, and get alley hoops. Kyrie can get to the rim. LeVert can score. Spencer can score. Obviously, probably one of the better mid-range shooters in the game. KD, the whole package. So, if I'm Brooklyn, I'm not changing this team. Obviously, if we need some more bench help, obviously you improve that. I think also Joe Harris should stay on there because you need that sharpshooter. Everybody else, though, if you want to try to make some different changes and think you can upgrade or change something around to fit the team that you want to create, be my guest. But those players that I have named, that is your core, and that's who you need to keep. And if they struggle together next season, then you can say, okay, let us attempt to find a different group of guys and see if that works. Obviously, Kyrie and KD are going to stay unless something just horrible, guys. Like, if Kyrie starts getting hurt again, 2 years in, you might hear rumblings. Brooklyn might be like, all right, we might want to let him go. Because, I mean, even KD got to realize, like, wow, man, if Kyrie keeps getting hurt, is he? I mean, I love him, but is it worth keeping him on the team if he can't even stay healthy for us? That's a question he has to ask himself. That is a question that he has to ask himself. And so if I'm Brooklyn, these are all questions that have to be thought about. And these are all questions that will be interesting moving on into the future. Because the Brooklyn Nets have clearly all the potential in the world to be a top team in the NBA. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They have all the potential in the world to be a top team. It's just a matter of going out there and putting the work in. And everybody staying healthy, their star players getting back to form and being the stars that we remember. Because if Kyrie plays at his best, where we've seen peak Kyrie, and KD plays at his best, where we've seen peak KD, I don't particularly see how you can sit here and say that's not a championship team. With your third, fourth options being Spencer Dinwiddie and Chris LeVert, either one could have a big game. You got 4 guys who could give you 20. You want to have that ability to say, hey, if somebody doesn't have a good night, we have someone who can step up. And the Nets have that right now. And I don't think they need to shake that up or mess that up or anything. I think that's going to be very important to keep those guys around because, like I said, you don't want to mess things up. You don't want to mess things up. But that's all we have for this segment. Next segment, we're going to talk about more basketball. Stay tuned.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the outlook on KD and the Nets next year. The Nets honestly have all the potential to be a championship team next year with KD coming back. And KD can be KD. He probably won't be KD at the beginning, but if he can be KD by the end, which always is what matters, is he going to be what we want by the end, then you got yourself a championship team. Keep Spencer Dinwiddie and Chris LeVert, and that formula and that group can mix and mesh together. Kyrie stays healthy. Why not? Why can't it work? That's what I say. So definitely a lot of potential there with the Nets. A lot of potential with the team. It's just a matter of just making things happen and hoping for the best moving forward. But okay, on this segment, we're going to do some Bleacher Report. They've been doing this thing for the last few weeks where they've been redrafting the draft, previous drafts that have happened, obviously now based off what we know about the players currently today and how they did from these drafts. So I'm going to break down this draft. Obviously, they did lottery picks. Probably going to do 1 through 10 for the most part, but I'll discuss what if we knew what they were going to become to this day, if they redraft some players, the players didn't go where they went, what would happen? So obviously, this is the 2017 draft, the Jason Tatum draft, I believe. And we're going to talk about where they would be. So, if the Philadelphia 76ers, number 1 in this draft, remember, they originally took Marco Fultz. In Bleacher Report's redraft, they take Jason Tatum. Now imagine that. Now imagine Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid. That might be a championship team if it works. Because Jason Tatum is going to be the big wild card here. Would Jason Tatum even be as good as he would be if he went to the 76ers? Would he have the same ability to be as great? Remember, he didn't really flourish till Kyrie got hurt, and then he became the main guy. So literally, he has not flourished until he had the ball in his hands. Obviously, with that 76ers team, Embiid would have it in his hands, and then Simmons. Even though Tatum would have an opportunity. But if he is what he was today, based off that draft, you would think 3 stars, championship. That means they would have never traded for Jimmy Butler, probably. You would think. Shoot, for all we know, that if Jason Tatum ain't become Jason Tatum, they might have said, hey, we'll give you Jason Tatum for Jimmy Butler. And he could be in Minnesota. So obviously that's a very interesting scenario to think about. At number 2, the Lakers, instead of drafting, I think in this point, D'Angelo Russell, draft actually, they didn't draft D'Angelo Russell, my bad. Instead of drafting Lonzo Ball, they draft Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, this was the year that before LeBron got there. So you're sitting here thinking to yourself, okay, Donovan Mitchell became a great star guard in the West. So let's say the Lakers still would be a bad team, right? Obviously, Ingram's already there. And let's say they still draft Josh Hart. Lakers could be better because obviously Donovan Mitchell became a star. But obviously, as you can tell with the Utah Jazz, he's not a true point guard, so they would still need a point guard. And this would honestly just set up more for, if LeBron still went to LA, him already having the second star, and then say, hey, we can get Anthony Davis over here too. Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. You look at that, they'd be unstoppable. Honestly. Probably even be KCP. Just saying. Number 3 of the Boston Celtics didn't select Jason Tatum, obviously, because he went number 1 in this draft, this redraft. They would have taken Bam Adebayo. Obviously, as you can see, Boston's biggest issue right now is big man. Obviously, at this time, I believe they had just got Al Horford. And Bam Adebayo, obviously, age 22, already an all-star big guy. Has ball handling, can pass, defense, has guard skills, tough, physical, great frame. He would be the perfect big man on the Boston Celtics. And remember, this is when Kemba Walker was still there. So Bam Adebayo and Kemba Walker, Al Horford, I mean, let's say they still get Jaylen Brown. I mean, that's not a bad team. That's not a bad team. You just wouldn't have Tatum. And it would make you have to re-sign Kemba, I would think. But I look at that and I'm like, yeah. Actually, you would have Kemba. My bad. He was on Charlotte. So you see, and then Kemba come over. Man, Boston, championship team. Really? You look at that lineup. Bam. Still would get Jaylen Brown. Bam. Horford. Even if Kyrie came, because Kyrie came that year, it might have worked better. It might have worked with Kyrie there. We don't know. Phoenix Suns. They went with Josh Jackson at this pick. In this draft, they go with De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, because the Suns' biggest issue to this day is still point guard. They don't have a good or a great point guard. They've had average point guards or decent, but they've never had a point guard who could really run with Devin Booker. A De'Aaron Fox, Devin Booker backcourt, man, you got De'Aaron Fox who can get past anyone, and you got Devin Booker who can outshoot you. That would be one of the most dangerous and dynamic backcourts in the NBA. Just so much potential with De'Aaron Fox to be a star in this league. With Devin Booker. Remember, and this isn't even DeAndre Ayton. So they would still got DeAndre Ayton. Let's just say they still had a bad record. They get DeAndre Ayton. You got your big three in terms of young players. Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, DeAndre Ayton. Let's say you still trade for Kelly Oubre. I mean, listen. And they would have had their point guard situation fixed. So that wouldn't even be the liability on those teams. Suns might be in very close contention for probably some playoff runs here with that lineup. I think it would work a lot. So that's going to be very interesting to me if that was the selection that they made. At number 5, we're just going to do 5 picks here. Sacramento Kings get Jonathan Isaacs. Obviously, they picked De'Aaron Fox here. And then Isaiah went to 6 to Orlando. Obviously, out of the game changers, you get to guys like Jonathan Isaacs. That's not a bad pick for them. Obviously, with Sacramento being where they are with De'Aaron Fox, instead of him being a star and building around De'Aaron Fox, Jonathan Isaacs would be a very good piece. Obviously, if you remember Jonathan Isaacs, an ankle injury really hurt him his rookie year. But he was always a guy who could play defense, rebound, and, you know, he would definitely help Sacramento on the defensive end. That would be his immediate impact, and then his offensive game will start to slowly come along. It'll start to slowly get better. It'll start to slowly improve. It'll start to slowly, you know, it just get up and really make that jump. You know, and obviously, look, he's quick and gifted. If he could become an elite defensive force and then have a decent offensive game, you got a guy who could be potentially on All NBA defense and All NBA and Defensive Player of the Year player awards, but also still be able to give you some good offense. And a guy like this, you don't usually pay the max contract to. So it's a guy that you maybe actually be able to keep at an affordable rate. But we're going to do the top 5 picks there. That's the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to listen to our other amazing podcasts on the GSMC Podcast Network. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Don't forget to leave a comment or a review. And I just want to say to everybody, stay safe and thank you. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.